Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar. As regular viewers to these webinars are familiar with, a lot of the content we have are from organizations who have been able to create a Power App which has really helped to support the activity within the force, both from an operational point of view, but from a back office side as well. One of the things that we are really interested in, though, is how do you go about creating those Power Apps? How do you use the technology to create something that will enable you to really make the work easier across your organization? And so today we're really grateful to the team at Avon and Somerset, who have looked at how they can use and embrace technology so that as they are creating this information and these Power Apps, it really helps embed the ways of working and gives them an opportunity to take it forward and roll it across the organization. So we thought it'd be a great opportunity to hear from them and to understand how you can learn from the activity they do. So I'm going to bring onto the screen Kyle from Avon and Somerset, who's going to be taking us through today. And as I said, don't forget, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat, and as soon as we can, we will get to them. So Kyle, over to you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, PDS, for having us this week. So we're here today, hopefully, to show how we're managing Power App design at Avon and Somerset Police. So we're excited to take you through the great user experience that we think we've set and the standards and consistent approach. So on the call today is myself. So I'm the lead product owner for Microsoft 365 in our IT department here at Avon Somerset, and I'll just quickly introduce Neil and George as well. So Neil is our user experience team leader, who will be speaking very shortly, and George is our Power Platform developer. So in terms of the agenda today, Neil, if you wouldn't mind going across. So Neil's going to be covering what is a design system, what are the benefits of having one, and how we've done that in Avon and Somerset. I'll briefly explain how we've begun the journey within Microsoft Power Platform around that. And then George is going to show us how we built this into the Power Platform using the component libraries and a couple of examples of apps that we've already released that are using this. You can see them in there for real. So Neil, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Carl. So yeah, as mentioned, I'm the user experience team leader here at Avon and Somerset. Part of my team, in my team is a UX designer, and we work closely with our dev team. And so the whole topic of how we work together, how we collaborate in design and development is obviously sort of part of our kind of daily business. And what I'm going to share with you will help kind of lift a lid on how we go about that. So I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to introduce you to the topic of design systems. So that's a key part of this. So what is a design system and what problems do they solve? A design system is a collection of reusable components that can be assembled together to build any number of applications. So why do we need them? Well, imagine you're developing multiple products and each one looks and behaves very differently, and every new project starts from scratch. This would be a very inefficient way of working, but it would also lead to a very confusing user experience for your users. Design systems solve these problems by providing a unified set of design rules and components to reuse in your applications. Think of a design system as a set of Lego bricks. Each Lego piece represents a component of the design system, such as a button or a form input field or your organization's color scheme. Just as you can use Lego bricks to build various structures, components in a design system can be assembled in different combinations to create cohesive user interfaces for different applications. This modular approach ensures that all new applications can be efficiently assembled, much like following a well-planned Lego model where every piece perfectly fits with the others. So an example of this, commonly design systems consist of these three elements: styles, components, and patterns. Styles are your rules for things like your color scheme and your typography, and these ensure a visual consistency across your products. Components are your building blocks, pre-designed objects like buttons, menus, or form input fields that you can reuse and combine. And patterns are combinations of components that solve a common design problem. or a user task, such as a search function or a login feature. So just to help illustrate that, here's an example of a pattern for a question page. And that is made up of rules that control the typography, the typeface and the colors, and two components, one for the radio input form component and another component for the button. So think of patterns as mini templates that you can reuse in your applications. So the benefits of a design system are they ensure consistency across user interfaces, providing users with familiar and predictable experiences, which enhances usability. They help teams build products faster and more consistently. They enhance collaboration between designers and developers, giving them a shared visual language when working together. They help with maintaining standards such as adhering to web content accessibility guidelines, which is a legal requirement on all of us to ensure that our websites and apps, including internal ones used by staff, can be used by everyone regardless of their abilities. The M365 component library that Kyle and George will be talking about is a key part of our broader design system project, and this project brings together our front-end developers, UX designer, product owners, and others that work on our website, reporting forms and web applications, and now our M365 Power Apps. Our project has its foundations in our CSS code, our HTML and JavaScript of our front-end library that's managed by our front-end developers. But working with our dev team, we realized we needed a design system site that would visualize and document these styles and components that were available in the front-end library, allowing our UX designer to easily identify existing components that could be reused in applications. So we now have a microsite dedicated to the design system, which serves as our source of truth and our shared reference for anyone working on an application. And then more recently, with George joining as our Power App developer, we began to explore how we could bring our design system approach into Power App design. And this culminated in the component library. So now we can collaborate effectively with both sets of our developers, whether they're front-end developers or M365, using the same shared visual language across our different environments. And ultimately, our users benefit from our familiar and consistent style being applied to our applications, regardless of the platform they were built on. So just got a couple of slides to just show you what our design system site looks like. So this is our home page, and you can see it's got links to our styles, components, patterns, and other guidelines. Here's our components page with our links to our various components. And here's an example of a component page for our button component with guidance on how to use it. If you're interested in the topic of design systems and you want to learn more about them, one way you can do this is by looking at other organizations' design systems. Many of these are publicly accessible, and you can use sites such as this design system repo site, to easily access them. But the one that I'd strongly recommend you start with and focus on is the Government Digital Services, or GDS, design system site. GDS have an international reputation for how they transform government digital services, and their approach to designing highly usable and accessible online services is a really big influence on our own design system here at ANS. So go and take a look at the components page on the GDS site and have a think about how you could bring some of their work into your design projects. Here you can see just some of the components that they've documented, so you don't have to think about reinventing the wheel when you're thinking about your own app development. So now I'm going to hand over to Kyle and George to tell you about how they've integrated our design system approach into M365 Power Apps.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Yeah, so very briefly, how it began with 365, because obviously this journey's been going on for a while, as Neil's talked about, but we needed to figure out how we were going to do that and why we needed to do that in 365. So single point of excellence is what I've got in there. Some people might refer to it as a single point of failure, but single point of excellence, George is only one Power App developer. We have a team, a 365 team in Avon and Somerset, which we're very lucky to have. We need to take what George's more complex skills around the Power platform and share that with the rest of the team, but also in future with others in the organization. Consistency in app design as well. I think it'd be great. It's great that we've got one place on the PDS catalog where we're sharing lots of solutions, and there's lots of hard work going into this. But imagine an officer having to use potentially 3 or 4 of those apps from the solutions catalog in one day with all different designs. So hopefully with one design or one common design, we're hoping that every officer that picks up one of multiple applications that we're putting out there, they'll be able to pick it up with no training and just run with it. I knew that there was going to be a high volume from previous experience of app requests coming through to our team due to the kind of flexibility around it. So it made sense as well to adopt that consistent design. And moving on to the next one as well, it kind of lends itself into sharing those building blocks so you can rinse and repeat it. You can pick them up, the same ones, you can drop them into an app, and the app development is a lot quicker then. Brand compliance as well, if everyone looks the same and has the correct color codes and logos and typography, then it's a no-brainer to translate that into 365 as well. And the ambition as well, which is a plan that we're working on at the moment, proposal we're working on, is to make that available to citizen developers as well. So I don't anticipate there'll be huge numbers, but there's definitely some keen people across the organisation who want to use the Power Platform. And if they could do it in the same way that we do, we think that'd be pretty amazing. So here's some of the reasons. George, over to you to show us a bit about it.
Cheers, Carl. So yeah, as Carl said, we've been doing quite a bit of work in our team. Bear with me while I just get my screen set up. There we go. So yeah, as mentioned, working with the sort of wider design system project, our take from a sort of Power Platform perspective was to then implement that into a component library. So what we've done in the Power Platform is we have built a component library. It looks and it behaves very, very similarly to Power Apps as when you're building an app, but allows you to build building blocks that you can then continue to reuse as you're going through with app development. So this is just on screen here, just sort of show you. This is the interface for building a component, very, very similar to Power Apps. The only slight difference is you have the ability to create custom properties for what you're designing. So in this instance here, we've got this reusable component which we use at the top of our screens, but on a case-by-case basis, the app name is going to be different. So in this case, we've got accommodation booking, but you can set that using a custom property. So when you import it into an app, you can just specify what you need to change on a case-by-case basis, rather than needing to implement the whole the whole component as a single item. With this, we kind of feed this into when we're building apps. Sorry, my mind's gone completely blank. It's very bad of me. Yeah, sorry. On the component custom properties side, there is a lot more that we could be doing, but what our stance is at the moment is we're sticking to the definite property options available. So Microsoft, they're always developing things, and there's a lot of preview properties and upcoming and experimental features which we're currently not using, just because we kind of want to be working from a stable platform. But what we can do with the custom properties is we can input colors, fonts, text, HTML, images, interactions, all sorts of bits and pieces. So currently it is working really well. To give you kind of insight into how easy that is to work, embedding that into an app. Here we have pretty much a blank app that I put together. If you wanted to, once you've built a component library, it's really easy to pull that into an app as you're building it. All you need to do is you need to go to your Add Items section, click on this little search icon, and then it gives you a list here of all the component libraries available that have been shared with you that you can access. So here we have ASP component library, Avon and Somerset Place. And if, for example, I want to bring in this phase banner as an option, all you have to do is select the ones you need and then hit import. That will then not immediately display into the app, but it will bring it into the app for you to be able to reuse. And then you can see on this add tray on the left, you've got all of the components that you've imported into your app that you can use. So if you were to build an app from scratch, but you wanted to reuse components from a library, You think, okay, great. Where should we start? We'll start with the screen header, and then that puts that straight in. As mentioned, we can use custom properties to define certain characteristics. If I call this app PDS demo, then immediately that changes that. And I've not had to go and import a black bar, a blue bar, an icon, and a couple of text boxes. That all just brings that through immediately. Similarly, we've got a footer template, and then immediately you can see sort of a structure to an app screen that looks quite familiar, or at least to us because we're using this system, but looks, as you go forward, looks familiar to what you're already using. And then, for example, the phase manner that we've just pulled in, that one there, we can add that in and then move that to where we need to. That one there, if I go on for the, well, that hasn't imported properly. There we go. So it kind of gives you a hint as to what the app's being used for. To give you a bit of a heads up to sort of some of the other types of component that we're using, I will in a moment show examples of where these have been used in the real world, as it were, in our active Power Apps. But we've got a few different options. We've got sort of information display components. So here we've got our notification component, for example. We've got the action component, and we've got an accordion component, which is sort of expandable and contracting as and when. So by default, it will be closed, but then if someone wants to see more information, they can open it. Similar to the policy guidance here on the details component, you click it, it will expand and give you the information. And then we also have sort of a navigation type component. If you were presenting options where you can check, you can customize your image that's displayed, and all of the text that's displayed is all controllable through the custom properties. And then we have sort of data input or other input type components, where we can have a central source. So things like you can have some basic conditions on here. So for example, month, you're not going to have a 13th month, so we can just by default have that flag as an error on there to show that something needs a bit of attention, whereas if I then change that, we're then looking good again. Similarly, on the sort of information type components, so this header text, we've built both in a red and a blue variation. So depending on the type of information you want to portray to someone, both of those options are available within the same component, so that you can just toggle that from the app. And if there was a scenario where in some instances the same information you need to show in different options, because this is a custom property, you can have your properties vary within the app based on other interactions. And similarly for this sort of text action here, this one here, we also have in like a red or blue option. So if I change that to red, and then for example the other one, we could change that to our amber variation, and just different emphasis depending on the type of message we're trying to portray. Yeah, as you sort of saw on the previous screen, pulling in components and customizing them is a really quick and easy way to build apps that sort of conform to your brand standards. But by doing it with this way, means you can spend less time on the design and more time on the sort of the complicated bits like your logic and your actual process flows behind it. So to give a little bit of a heads up into, I'll skip past these because these bits I've already done. Give a heads up into where we've used these sort of patterns and components within Power Apps that we've got. For example, my out of court resolutions Power App. This is a fairly recent one that we've launched, and it's to support the updates to the legislation around out of court resolutions. This app is like a decision aid for officers, so they'll work their way through the app, input information, and based on the information they put in, it will give a recommendation at the end to say, based on what you've told us, this is the suggested outcome for the suspect, whether that's to be charged or whether that's possibly a community resolution, a chance to change deferred prosecution, or a conditional caution or something. And the app works on that logic all the way through. But in order to capture that logic, we need to present the questions in a familiar way to officers so that they can quick and easily enter the information that we need. So we've got a start screen component, a start screen pattern here. As Neil said, we've got the typography variations and standards that we've applied, combined with sort of buttons and that header and footer components. And this is quite a similar pattern that we have on most of our apps at the moment. It's a starting point. It gives people information as to say, right, this is what the app's going to be used for, and makes it really clear and easy to say, right, this is how we're going to use it. And then again, we've got our phase banner at the top here, which gives users the opportunity to give feedback at any point while they're using the app, for this being a new service. So moving on, types of data capture that we've got, again, pulling from the design system, we've got text input, so like full name of a suspect. We're using here our date picker component, and then we've got radio elements that we can use as well as drop down and multiple choice gallery type radio things, control, sorry. And then here we've got this very similar option, but rather than being a single select, we've got a multiple select version. So this is what we're using to capture data. And then we've got a few different sort of patterns and components we can use to display that information. So here, for example, we've got a sort of review list. So here's what you've told us based on the answers you've given. And then sort of based on what you've told us, this is what we suggest. So again, this is using the out of court resolutions option, out of court resolutions app, to say, right, well, based on what you told us, here's what we suggest. As well as then like a final, right, this is what you need to do now kind of pair of components. Another variation we have is we have our new Right Care Right Person app. This allows force incident managers or supervisors within the comms area to review if there's any escalations on a call that suggest we may or may not have done the appropriate action as a result of a Right Care Right Person type call. So this app takes people through a series of questions to determine whether or not thresholds being met for police attendance. It identifies who the lead agency should be. But what's slightly different about this app, as well as having that sort of decision tree element, so it takes people through a series of questions, we also need to display slightly different data as well. So as mentioned, we've got similar patterns to what we've already seen, radio elements with a question, but in this instance, we've got this details option. So then where there's a specific definition that we need to be very clear on, we can present that in the app, but we've got the option to say, right, well, here's the information, but we don't necessarily need to serve it immediately, because as you can see, it's a lot of information to be digested, which may or may not be needed by the user, but is there should they need it. Again, very similar pattern to what we've got previously with here's what we suggest as the outcome, and then like here's what you need to do next. Again, using components from our component library. What's slightly different here though is we need the ability for specific people to be able to go in and review those inputs. And so as a result, I've got a gallery component, sorry, a gallery item here. In this case, I've only got one item in the gallery because I've just stuck in some test data for this demo, but then that allows people, the reviewer, to go in and say, right, here's all the information that we need to display. And that's us done. Any questions?
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And fair play to you, George, for doing a live demo. I've tried it many a time and failed abysmally. So well done for doing it so well.
I did have some backup slides if I needed them.
Excellent. Good stuff. Right, we do have some questions in the chat, and I will go through to them. So thank you all so very much. First one is from Steve. This is my second time seeing this presentation from our Avon and Somerset colleagues, and you never cease to impress me. And I think we all echo that. Devon and Cornwall have a mobile app template which would benefit from component libraries, so it would be fantastic to collaborate. Is that an opportunity, guys?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we speak to Steve and the rest of the team and Gary occasionally, so it's definitely something that we'd be happy to talk to them more about.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question is, what tool or software are you using to create or use the design system?
So good question. So from our side, obviously we're using there's the component library feature within the Power Platform. For the actual design system site, it's a website that's been built by our dev team. If that person's interested in replicating something similar, if they could share their contact details, we'd be more than happy to see if our dev team can get in touch with them and share further.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Question from Catherine, which was then followed up by Joanne. So Catherine has asked, is it possible to share a component library or components? I would love to be able to borrow with Pride. And Joe has said, can we borrow with Pride too at TVP and Hampshire and Isle of Wight?
It's definitely a question I saw come in. I believe there is the ability to export a component library. Obviously, what we've done is specific in terms of this ANS features within there. However, it is heavily based on PDS catalog. I'm sure that that's something that we can negotiate. Please share those details with us, and we can look to get that across as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Question here from Alex at Warwickshire. At Warwickshire Police, we also have a design standard and use reusable components within our Power Apps, so fully agree with this approach. Ours is based on extensive feedback from officers and accessibility groups from neurodiversity, etc., particularly on mobile view. His question is, how does your Gov theme look on a mobile view, and have you had any kickback from officers re accessibility on the mobile? For example, we had to introduce light stroke dark modes and font size change options in our apps.
It's a
really good question. George, did you want to kick that one off?
Yeah, so I guess in terms of sort of the mobile view, the components that we develop and the apps as a whole, particularly the My Output resolutions, we build them so that the same app can be accessed from desktop or mobile. Obviously, that does throw up the issue of the completely different real estate available on the screen. So, for example, as just like a single standout example, the banner that we have at the top of the screen that says what the app title is, who's logged in, based on the screen size, that will adjust and show different information. So the app will look slightly differently on mobile devices to make things more clear. And for that, we use like breakpoints within Power Apps as a sort of ability to determine basically if they're on a mobile device or on a laptop or bigger screen, so that we can give the right information. In terms of sort of the light and dark modes, that's not something we've encroached out in the Power Platform. It is something that is embedded within our design system more widely, I believe. But yeah, as mentioned, this is kind of still an evolving product for us.
Thank you. Last couple of questions. So could you please share with us how long was the process for your team to create the final design system?
It's a good question as well. Neil, do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah, I suppose part of the answer to that is that the design system's never done. It's an evolving product. It's an evolving project. We're always thinking of coming up with ideas for new components or thinking of revising components, and our dev team are very much heavily, a lot of their time is spent working on code consolidation, where they're working with legacy systems that are outside of the code base of the design system, and they're trying to bring that code under the front end library to make everything they do more manageable and more sustainable. So that is a difficult one to answer, to put a kind of a finger on it, put a number on it. I suppose the other challenge we had with the design system project was having the capacity to get it up and running. In terms of the key thing from a UX team point of view is we wanted that design system site to start visualizing the components and styles that were available in our code base. And it's been a bit of one of those sort of side project things for the dev team and the UX team to try and squeeze in amongst everything else. So yeah, I can't give you a straightforward answer to that question, I'm afraid.
But I think it really does depend on the environment that you're trying to create the team in and the support around it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Rob has asked, it looks quite a lot like the gov.uk design system is a good way. Was that intentional?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer that one. Yeah, so as we said in the presentation, it's definitely we want to use as much of the learning. GDS put a lot of money and time into working with community groups and different people with different needs. So why would we reinvent the wheel and do something different, for our staff and officers who might have done their sawn or taxed their vehicle, at least they got a similar experience when they're using an application in in their line of work then as well. So yes, it definitely was intentional.
Brilliant. And the final question from the audience, from Paul, which says, in Hampshire, we use RMS niche. Have you managed to integrate data input from that?
Big topic in the 365 world nationally. Question is not quite. However, by the end of this year, we intend to do that. We're not going to be doing it via a direct API or custom connector in the Power Platform. We're a Blue Prism force. We've got a robotics team. We're hoping to use a robot as the kind of connection. So it'll be taking from SharePoint lists or from data they've extensively integrated into niche already.
Brilliant. And just a follow up on that from Andrew said, or any other operational data systems.
Yeah, and the beauty with RPA is that it can connect, or you can use the robotics to connect to any system and to kind of take it to any system. And the robotics team have been kind of highlighted as a regional center of excellence almost. So we're lucky that they have done a lot of work and they've integrated to a lot of systems with robotics already. So we're hoping to use their skill set to do that with 365 moving into some of the systems.
Brilliant. Thank you. Before we wrap up, Carl, you've put a link into the chat and also you've got a QR code on the screen. Can you tell everyone about what the intention is?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd really appreciate if anyone's got 2 or 3 minutes and enjoyed this and agreed with what we were doing. Be keen just to hear where you're from, and what your current position is. If you've got a design system, if you haven't, if you're looking to, have you done something in 365 component libraries, and just any other feedback or suggestions or any other information you'd like to get from us. So be much appreciated.
Brilliant. Thank you. So we'll leave the QR code up on the screen. The link is in the chat. Just remains for me to, first of all, thank all 3 of you for a brilliant session. We have overrun, but I think it was really worthwhile just taking it a little bit longer because it is a great initiative. It is a great way of moving forward. And I think the questions showed the interest from the audience. So thank you all very much. George, again, hats off again for doing a live demo. Very brave and well done. And Kyle, I know you've got a brand new Wi-Fi system in place, so it's slightly glitching, but again, we appreciate your time. With regards to everyone else, thank you so much for joining us. If you've got any questions, I'm going to just very quickly bring on the map, which shows your business engagement manager for your force. So please, if you have any follow-up questions or you want to find out more, please reach out to your individual business engagement manager. Thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Wednesday webinar. Take care.